All right, we're going to spend some time hearing a little bit more about the Texas story, hearing about how and why we decided to host actually here in Texas. We wanted to be able to share a little bit more about the wonderful policy environment and sort of collective environment that's here that's helping push forward more of these accelerated credential pathways. So I'm so pleased to welcome to the stage our guest today, Chair Daniel, who's the chair of the Texas Workforce Commission, Commissioner Keller, who leads the Texas Higher Ed Coordinating Board, and John Fitzpatrick, who leads Educate Texas, who is a statewide intermediary that does a lot of work in connecting K-12 higher ed workforce and supporting a number of the different communities in this room as well. Before we get started, just a few points of context. I think Texas, part of the reason we wanted to highlight the work that they have done is that as we look across the country, they are leading the country in the number of students that are graduating high school with associate's degrees. So almost 8,000 students each year. That's impressive, but I think what's even more impressive is they're not happy with where they are. They're really trying to set a vision for growth, and they're trying to make sure that those students are not only participating in dual enrollment, but doing so in clear pathways that lead to high-quality credentials that ultimately open up that job access. Almost a decade ago, Governor Abbott pulled together a structure to support some of this collaboration. So there is a formalized structure within Texas called the Tri-Agency, which brings together the Higher Ed Coordinating Board, TEA, the state's K-12 agency, along with the Workforce Commission to really talk about how they are collaborating together to set this new vision, to make sure that students are finding easier ways to earn those credentials, that they're aligned with the workforce needs today and into the future. And that has driven a lot of great work within the state. Recently, the state coordinating board and Commissioner Keller released a plan called Talent Strong Texas that is focusing on increasing the number of credentials that all individuals within Texas are able to get to. So looking at that 25 to 64 age range, doing that through really streamlining those pathways, identifying which are those quality credentials, making sure that there is coherence between the K-12 and higher ed system, and then delivering on more opportunities for engaging with employers and employment through work-based learning. And they've decided to entrench a lot of this through incentives. So there are two really important pieces of legislation that we're going to spend a little bit more time talking about that give rise to a lot of the work and sort of support a lot of the work that's happening in Texas. HB 3 in 2019 was a K-12 funding bill that did a lot of things. We're not going to spend time talking about everything it did, but importantly for this conversation, it put forward outcomes bonus dollars for school districts to prioritize helping students not only do the things that we know are important in terms of college and career readiness, but actually get to that next outcome, whether that's enrollment, enlistment in the military, completion of those industry-based credentials. Similarly, last year, the legislature passed HB 8, which is a community college funding bill that again does a lot of things, but importantly for this particular conversation, two things we want to call out. It also prioritizes outcomes-based funding for community colleges to do a number of things, including focusing on helping more youth get through structured blocks of dual credit. So focusing on that 15 credit block piece, and providing additional financial incentives for youth across the state that are coming from low-income communities to be able to access these opportunities without any need for family investment. So the policy environment is great. You've got a lot of collaboration across the agencies. You've got a clear vision of what they're trying to do. You now have a set of legislation that is not only setting a floor, but is actually trying to create incentives for districts and community colleges to do this set of partnerships. And we'd love to talk a little bit today with the leaders that have been responsible for getting this direction to hear a little bit more about how these things came about, what they're learning early on in the implementation, and what advice they might give to you in your states as you try to build more of that set of enabling conditions to allow this work to advance. So with that, I'm going to start and ask, maybe I'll start with you, Chair Daniel. You get the first word on this. So the strategic plan, the legislation, the tri-agency, it all is based in this idea that no one sector can really support students alone. This notion that it takes that sort of collaboration to really drive towards student success. Can you talk a little bit about how and why that came about and sort of why that's been the heartbeat behind a lot of the work that you guys have been doing in Texas?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the foundation of the whole tri-agency effort, which is this notion that we tend to pick up children at about age 3, 4 for pre-kindergarten. We'll push them through the public school system, K-12. We really want to capture a lot of that imagination. Grades 13 and 14, some people will push on to grades 15 and 16, some people will push on to grade 19. That's a PhD group, I keep track of them. And this continuum kind of will start to operate in its own environment if you don't continue to talk to it from the outside. So for example, I would just say this: universities are really good at advising degree programs. Now, I have 132 hours of my degree program. 2 of those are PE, so take those out. Let's go to that. And so I have 130 hours, half of which are things I should have already known when I got there, like history and political science and how to write and stuff like that. And the rest of it's communications, which was what my undergraduate degree was in. And they turned me out on the world, and and I got a job first right out of the box. Every box was checked. And 5 years later, everything I knew was completely antiquated. And like nobody called me and told me we were going to have Microsoft Excel and that I should learn that. Like no one consulted me whatsoever. They went from the TI-30 calculator to the TI-35. How was I supposed to know? We had no YouTube, we had no internet. And so 5 years later, here I am trying to sort of maintain my relevance in the workforce. Fast forward a few years later, and I'm sitting in a position where we're able to look at this, and we're seeing this repeat itself in all sectors, in all parts of the state. At the same time that employers are saying, this package of courses that you deliver to us is great, but there's other things that they need to learn, and frankly, we're just looking for some certain skills. And so around about 2016 or so, and then again in 2019, we really began to see that this continuum stretches out a lot longer than age 3 through 22. It's age 3 until you decide to retire. For some people 55, for some people 85, those are personal choices, I'm intervening. But it's, as long as you're in the workforce, all of this kind of stretches out over this continuum. And so if we're going to build ways for students to acquire skills, we need to do that in consultation with the people who are asking for those skills. And those skills are only important. This is the most important part. I may just get up off stage after I say this. Those skills are what you have to rent to the marketplace. For most of us, me included. This is how I feed my family. This is how I have money to do the fun things that I like to do. The skills that I have acquired are what I have of value in the marketplace. There are ways to validate that value: certificates, credentials of value, degrees, what university you went to. All those things help reinforce the value of what I have. But the real value of me in the marketplace that is the workforce are the skills that someone wants to rent. If you have less rentable skills, you will demand less money for those skills. If you have more marketable or rentable skills, you will make more money for those. Money is a personal decision. What you choose to live on is different than what I might choose to live on. That's for us to decide. But we're put in a position for making sure that people understand the value of skills that they can acquire, what skills they might wish to acquire, and what that might mean for them in the workforce. School people and business people will tell you that they're BFF, I mean best friend. And they are. They see each other at all the same events. And they talk about all the things that are going on in their community. And what they rarely talk about are what the businesses think they're not seeing by way of employees, and what the school people never talk about really. Our graduates are telling us that they weren't fully equipped. What does that mean? They don't ever have that conversation. They love each other very much. But I think the reality of the fact is there are no built-in places where they get together and are forced to have this conversation of, this is what I need, this is what I'm able to provide. How can we work together to do this? And I think the tri-agency gives us the opportunity to bring everybody together in a forum where that is the conversation. Not how great we're doing, not how much we love Texas Tech University, and we should. Over all the others. Those are all great conversations to have, but the conversation that we have to have in the tri-agency format is, these are the skills people need to be able to maximize their value in the workforce, and this is how they get those skills. When we have that conversation, what we have is we have more streamlined, more cost-effective schooling. What we have is people who can last longer on their training in the workforce, will have that skill and reskill. What you have is a way to make it more cost-effective, more efficient, and more advantageous for everyone.
So if I could pick up on that, I know you've got a bunch of questions. But
no, I was going to ask you whether Texas Tech actually is your favorite.
So I think I just want to underline this critical point that Bryan makes about this focus on skills, being really at the crux of our tri-agency collaboration, sure, but a lot of the policy innovations and the direction we're trying to head in Texas. Because traditionally, you've got the K-12 and the incentives set up around K-12 and standards-based accountability with a focus on students passing tests and trying to get students to high school graduation. And let's just be candid, there's been a lot of the focus traditionally has been on, we've got to eliminate basic literacy and numeracy, right? And then in higher ed, we're accustomed to being able to stipulate the value proposition and say, well, we're going to focus on producing degrees and we folks who are experts in the field, and that we're going to measure success in the number of degrees, or even in, we'll talk about educational attainment generally, how many people have degrees and credentials. As an aside, like one of the things, a couple of things I don't like about, when you mentioned the 8,000 credentials awarded to high school students, so one of them, sure, should it be more? Yes. Especially we should do more workforce credentials in high school. But the other thing is, the vast majority of those associate's degrees are multidisciplinary. They're essentially associate's degrees in college. And students then are surprised at why they get then to the university. And a lot of those credits didn't apply to a specific degree program because they were on a plan that wasn't designed to go anywhere. It was just designed to give them a multidisciplinary associate's degree. Right? That's a very traditional approach. And then what we have as employers will complain and say, we don't have graduates with the skills that they need to be successful. And of course, in higher ed, we're good at complaining and say, well, we would do a lot better if K-12 sent us better students. Right? So what we're trying to do is break that down. Because when I talk to employers, they say, look, our workforce needs are changing faster than we can understand. And so what we need to do is break down these barriers and talk about how those skills are changing and how we can infuse those in the program. So we're not just producing degrees, but we're the first state in Texas to put down a marker, say we don't want to count degrees that aren't of value in our economy. So we talk about credentials of value, not because we say they're of value, but because employers value them. Because we look at what the wage experience is and say, is there a premium associated with that credential? Because Bryan's right, we are so good at making up credentials in higher ed. What's a lot harder is to say, well, what are you going to do with that, right? And then what's the value to that individual who's taken out debt, who's stepped out of the labor market, who's committed their time, their resources to earning that credential? How does that translate into opportunity for that student?
That's great. John, I want to bring you into this conversation as well. You said the intersection outside of these systems, but the intersection between K-12 higher ed workforce, and think a lot about how you create tables to enable this work to happen in more local communities. Can you talk a little bit about the role that intermediaries and advocates play in trying to support the work that the agencies are doing across the three of them?
No, absolutely. Welcome to Texas. It's great to have you here. Thank you to ESG for bringing, I understand, 30 teams from all across the country. And it's an honor to be on the panel with Commissioner Keller and Chair Daniel. So we're one of you. We're a statewide intermediary, but we are working locally to try to connect K-12 higher ed and workforce. And I would say that the two things that we've tried to do is to be supportive of the vision and the strategy at the statewide level. And there's some, not only incredible work in the tri-agency, but in the two commissions in 2018 that led up to the school finance legislation in HB 3. And then most recently, there was a community college commission. And I just want to particularly note Commissioner Keller's leadership on that. It was an incredible combination of community college leaders, state legislators, business leaders, Commissioner Keller. So we try to be one of the many voices in the choir, at a statewide policy level that support the tri-agency and the strategy, and then at a local level. You guys know, like when you're pulling together a principal and a superintendent and a chief academic officer, your community college president or the chief academic officer of the university, the chamber or a business leader, like it's messy. Right? And the business leaders get invited to 27 different meetings, from every high school and every community college and every nonprofit. The community colleges are sometimes overwhelmed. The school people don't always speak the language, of either business or higher ed. So that's kind of the translating that we try to do in regions. We do it in a couple different ways. We've got some specific regional collaborations in places like the Rio Grande Valley, the southern sector, of Dallas County, my colleague Kenny Wilson. We also have a wonderful joint venture with the community partnership called the Texas Impact Network, where we're basically providing kind of a pro bono HOV technical assistance lane for school districts and local groups to draw down some of these policy innovations, things like CCMR, bonus funding. But I think it's, you've got to have the state infrastructure. We're super fortunate in Texas to have these policy levers. And then you've got to figure out how you connect the dots between K-12 higher ed and workforce at a local level. I would just add to Commissioner Keller's point about the associate degrees. We are doing a great job in terms of things like early college. We're really looking at how can we have more of a coherent curriculum. So we're thinking from high school to community college to 4-year. We need to do better about that. Because if you're getting an associate degree in general studies, that's not going to help you earn a BA. And I think we've got the most P-Tech academies of anywhere in the country. So we're really working hard on the workforce side to open up possibilities and not foreclose them off. So students can take that dual credit, earn a high school degree, but also get a workforce certificate and then jumpstart on both higher ed and the workforce.
Thanks, John. Commissioner Keller, I want to ask, you have had a lot of work done. There's obviously a lot of investment here in college, P-Tech, others. Both HB3 and HB8 are on the incentive side. They're sort of saying, great foundation of the work that's happening, but we want to give you even more money to sort of turn your attention to these things that matter, that we think matter, right? Can you talk a little bit about why the current funding or accountability systems weren't driving towards those outcomes, and sort of how you see the investments? Certainly, I know you know that HB8 work a little bit closer.
Yeah,
the investment leads in that direction.
Yeah, so we were primarily at the state level, with state funding seat time. So this is that problem of funding the wrong end of the student, right? Because we were primarily just funding like what kinds of courses students were enrolled in, independent of whether they completed courses. we had a little bit of funding. We were driving through what they called success points, but that was a very small percentage of the system. And the other big problem is in higher education, we did what was called some certain appropriations. Essentially, like, we would use our funding formulas to allocate funding to colleges. The legislature would decide how much funding they were going to pour into that, and then it would sort of get allocated across the colleges. And so that meant that you could be actually improving, and then you turn out losing money because you weren't increasing enrollments at the same rate as everybody else in the state. So now we're already in implementation on a radically new system where we're driving 95% of our funding through an outcomes-based formula that's tied to production and credentials of value, with more if you're in a high demand field, students transferring or getting 15 hours in a concurrent enrollment program. And we can talk about it a little bit. I'm a much bigger fan of concurrent enrollment than 2+2. I think 2+2 is yesterday. And again, since traditional patterns of consumption, we need to lean into concurrent enrollment. And then students getting 15 hours of dual credit or dual enrollment that applies to an academic or workers credit. It's not just more dual credit, right? We need to have intentionality with that. We need to make sure that that dual credit is applicable to something, fewer of the sort of random acts of dual credit. And then we weight those outcomes if the student's low income, if the student was not college ready when they enrolled in college. And our biggest weights are actually for adult learners, because we've got to focus on reskilling and upskilling our incoming workforce so that Bryan's employers are going to have more access to the skills that they need. So that's where we're driving most of the money in the new system. We also put some money into stabilizing the funding for the property poor and smaller rural serving colleges. But most of the focus is through this new outcomes-based formula. So yes, on productions of credentials, but we want to especially focus the attention on credentials that are of value to individuals and align with the demand for those credentials in our labor market.
How do you, Chair Daniel, how do you all think about that alignment piece? And just making sure, as you start your comments with saying jobs are shifting constantly, right? AI is coming into the world of work. As you think about the skills that matter, as you think about how to engage youth in the sort of shifting environment, what role do you think things like work-based learning or other opportunities for sort of engaging in that early on in their journey can help them be better positioned to be successful?
Yeah, there's really no question about how useful almost any kind of work-based learning opportunity is going to be, whether it's a co-op program in high school, whether it's just a solid internship, or really even a solid internship. A formalized apprenticeship program, a summer job. I was cooking at a truck stop one time. It was great. I didn't be there until 3 in the afternoon, and they let me off at midnight, and I had the whole rest of the morning to play, and it was wonderful. Until I realized that it was only ever going to pay $3.75 an hour. So, like, you learn something from any time you kind of stick your toe in the water to see what it's going to be like. I think with House Bill 8, certainly with House Bill 3 from earlier, what I think is we're starting to see better ways to build those into the natural progression of students. I would tell you that a trades apprenticeship program, it is an either or with college, whether it's community college or university. Like, go ahead. If you want to be an electrician, you probably should, if you think that's what you want to do. You're looking at, and I can't guarantee you anything more than about $125,000 to start, so you can work from there. But doing that through an apprenticeship program is going to be way more efficient than trying to do that the hard way. And what we are now successfully being able to do is attract community colleges to be that provider. We are successfully being able to attract high school CTE programs to offer both the pre-apprenticeship and possibly even the first year of the apprenticeship option. If I cut a year off your 3.5-year apprenticeship while you're still in high school, now it's 2.5 years. You're earning, we'll find jobs that we actually can't work with a whole lot of electricity to 1018 specs. And it's like, there's opportunities for you to start playing into that workforce real early. When you do that, I think you maximize your skills. The other part to that is maybe a year in you decide that maybe electricity's not for me. I was destined to be a plumber. And at that point, switch, you haven't really lost anything. You've learned how to work at this point. That's probably about it. There's an opportunity to do that. And I think community colleges have found some new flexibility, and I think some others are doing the same thing. Before I jump off this topic, I would also just say that we're seeing a lot more structure in university internship programs, and I think that employers in this state particularly are approaching those as just a full-on recruitment tool. And so those summer internships are a lot more about than just, getting someone some coffee or making some copies or all the things that you do in an intern. Like I see them, I know what ours look like. It's real work, and we let you do meaningful things because we're actually trying to see what you're capable of, because we're probably going to hire you. There's right at 750,000 jobs listed to be filled in this state right now. There's 620,000 unemployed people. I'm just going to stop on that map marinate for just a second. All of that exists because of the skills gap of some kind. Whatever it is, doesn't matter. I don't need to compare language to skills gap. That's the reason for that. And so when you have more adaptable skills, you have relevant and real kind of workplace experience, you're benefiting from that, but these employers are benefiting even more because this is a really challenging hiring environment. And so for me to be able to pre-screen someone while they're still in school and understand, no, in fact, that is the person that I want. It's very powerful for any employer. I've got 4,500 employees, so I'm in the same boat as everybody else. And any tool that we can use to do that, if we do that right, in collaboration with Harrison, in collaboration with John, all the public schools, when we do that right, every single one of us is going to benefit from that collaboration. All of us. The employers get people to hire, people make more money, better conditions. And more importantly to me, their longer term prospects in the workforce are just that much better. It's one thing to be a plumber's helper today. $17 an hour, not bad. You get outside, you're tied up in a desk somewhere, doing something you don't love. But $17 an hour can't be forever. 4 years of work in the journeyman's plumber's license will double that $17. If I told you you could double your 401k in 4 years, would you listen to? It's the same thing for these guys. It's just a little different way of looking at it. So I think those collaborations become incredibly important. I think finding even more innovative ways to give people some workplace experience becomes important too. And you know what? Gosh, Ryan, I got 30 more minutes on this, but there's other panels and other questions. The point is, any work we do here, any opportunities we can uncover people to get on-the-job experience, however that looks, we're going to be doing that. We're going to be pioneering that, and we're going to try to perfect that, because I think that's really the path forward for keeping this economy moving the way it's been moving.
Harrison, did you want to jump in on this? Or?
No.
Okay. John, I wanted to ask you, we now set a policy environment where there is a lot of funding, a lot of incentive. You have employers who clearly are ready to step up and support. How do you think about the implementation of pathways, the implementation of this work on the ground in K-12 schools and districts that have many, many other things that they're focused on? How and why is the focus on making sure that every student is on a high-quality pathway that includes dual enrollment, includes work-based learning, includes high-quality advising. That is the core of what high schools are doing amidst all of the other challenges that they face.
Yeah, it's not easy, as I'm sure, all you guys are finding locally, because even in a state like Texas where, there's a policy framework, that more or less makes sense. There's state efforts, there's philanthropic efforts, there's corporate efforts, there's local efforts. So it's a little bit of, how do you have all these individual streams come together to form, more of a mighty river pathway. So I think we're thinking about it in 3 ways. One, how do we support, whether it's an early college high school, a P-Tech Academy, a CTE high school, some high school that has made a conscious decision in their design model that they're going to look at some high quality, coherent, curriculum, whether it's AP, IB, dual credit. They've got a commitment to project-based learning, to internships, to work-based learning. So again, 400 or so early college high school and P-Tech academies are doing that. So how do we support the schools effectively building that in with philanthropic, corporate, and public resources? Number 2, and I'm sure Keller knows more about this, but we're, year 40 or 50 with summer youth employment programs, and state-sponsored work-based learning. How do we build that up below? Whether it's during the school year, for students with disabilities, whether it's the traditional summer youth employment in the summer, how do we have those better connected into the workplace? And then the third one, which Chair Daniels talked about, which I'm very bullish on, is the combination of taking traditional apprenticeships, and it is amazing what you can do in electrical and plumbing, but if you think about taking that same apprenticeship model or the youth apprenticeship model in IT, in healthcare, actually in teaching. Tennessee was the first one that created an apprenticeship in the teaching model. So those are kind of the 3 ways we're thinking about it. But as a local intermediary, or state local intermediary, you're trying to map these different funding streams, you're trying to map your different, K-12 higher ed employer partners, and still we're kind of a work in progress, I think, at a local level to connect the dots.
So there's another piece to this that I think we should throw out there that I think is going to be really useful and disruptive to a lot of this work over the next few years, is that we're also investing a ton in our educational workforce data infrastructure. So we have incredibly robust data in Texas. It's historically been pretty hard to get at. And so a lot of our community colleges, for example, didn't really help with the employment outcomes for their graduates, right? And so one of the key initiatives that I try to see collaboration is modernizing the data infrastructure so that we can sort of reset the baseline across our higher ed institutions, how they can work with data and what they can see. And so we've just released to all of our community colleges privileged reports so they can see what the wage experience is like of their graduates over time. Like some of the bigger ones, the more well-resourced ones, they have like a whole team of analysts that were looking at workforce data and that kind of thing. But most of our colleges are small. Even many of our universities haven't had the ability to track students' progress to their credentials, let alone see what happens on the other side. So there's also this piece of sort of resetting the baseline of what we can do with data. Because I think, we have to be really committed to working together, but we also have to have the courage then to go and look and see what's effective or not. And some of these are empirical questions. I think where some of this work breaks down is where you have K-12 saying, well, we're going to tell you what college readiness looks like. Or even when I was back at the university, you'd be in a faculty meeting and faculty would say, well, this absolutely has to be a prerequisite for this. And then you talk to the student dean, they go, we waive that requirement half the time. Students do fine. If we have to actually look into the data, these are empirical questions. So I think we would be careful about where it's just sort of competing assertions of authority, right? Again, what employers are saying is our needs are changing. Our needs are changing faster than we can understand in some cases. So we need the kind of partnership where we have the employers at the table as we're designing our programs together, we're looking at sort of what those outcomes look like, so we can continue, so we can adapt our programs to better equip the students to do the next thing, right? So I think what's coming quickly is unprecedented access to data that in some cases is going to be really painful. And I'm not saying like this is coming in the near future. This is coming like in the next 3 weeks. There's new tools that we're rolling out where you're going to be able to see students' pathways from middle school through to their higher ed credentials within the next 4 months because of the Workforce Commission's partnerships. We're going to also have more data where you can trace them into working in Texas and what those outcomes are like. And you can disaggregate that data by race and ethnicity, by sex, and by income. Some of that's really painful data. But again, that's going to be usefully disruptive and informative of these conversations.
Can I jump in real quick? So Texas, like any state, has its strengths and weaknesses. But one point that Commissioner Keller made is really important. Going back to the 90s, we've always had an explicit focus on disaggregating data by ethnicity. And everything we're talking about, whether it's permanent associate degrees, whether it's apprenticeship programs, whether it's work-based learning, we are generally not doing as good a job for our African American, Latino, and first generation students. And we need to own that. I think as a state and as a country, we're definitely making progress. We're just incredibly excited with these data tools that will be able to expand the aperture, beyond just sort of K-12 assessments, but we'll be able to look at this whole pathway movement, and shine a light on what we're doing well, which tends to be more, kids who look like me, who look like this panel, as opposed to African American, and first generation students. So very excited about what that's going to help us do.
I appreciate that. We're going to turn to the audience for some questions here after I ask this next one to start thinking about any questions you have. Commissioner Keller, I do want to maybe pull a little bit from what you were saying on the data piece and really opening up what could be some hard questions, right? So Texas has been for a long time a leader in dual credit in terms of opportunities. I think over time there has been an increase in participation for students of color, low-income students, and yet based on some of the data that universities released and the data your coordinating board has released, those credits don't always turn into students continuing their paths in higher education.
Yeah, so a couple of things. So first, just one, maybe take issue with one thing is that we've had incredible growth in dual credit in Texas. So we had say 99 top credit, but I think we have maybe 10,000 kids who enrolled in college or enrolled in high school. We have like 250,000 now, right, across universities and community colleges. We have not seen the same rate of growth for the low-income students, right? So one of the things we did in HBA is there's a new provision actually that's already in effect that enables the students who are eligible for free reduced lunch to take the dual credit and dual enrollment courses at no cost. No tuition, no fees, no textbook, no cost. So we're hoping that that'll enable many more students to take advantage both of the academic and the workforce opportunities. And in the new system, the colleges also still get the incentives when the students earn the credentials. If they earn a workforce credential in high school, they can get the incentive both in dual credit and for the producing incentive, right? So we have made some progress there. But the way the system was set up before, if you're just funding on seat time, then the incentive is just to do more and more and more. What else can we put out there as a dual credit course? And then the students, to your point, the students then will get to the next, they get to the university or they get into the community college, and they'd be surprised that a lot of those credits didn't actually apply to any degree program, where they would be electives they didn't really need, right? So, so this is something that we're trying to own in a couple of ways. So first of all, say, our incentive isn't just do more and more dual credit. Our incentive is 15 hours that apply to an academic or workforce credential. The other thing is we're actually requiring all of our colleges and universities to have recommended sequences of courses for every degree and certificate program they offer, and to use that in advising. And we will be releasing, so we have a one-stop advising portal we developed with TWC and with TA called My Texas Future. So go to mytexasfuture.org, create a profile, create a Reyna, see where we're going, see the jobs in Texas, higher ed programs that relate to those. This is where we'll put our new Apply Texas, so we'll pre-populate college applications starting this summer. There'll be a new advising tool for students that we release for this next school year, where students can compare and query those recommended course lists. So if the student's trying to figure out, like, well, which dual credit do I take, where they can see kind of what the exchange value is. Also, for that matter, which APs should I take? And so they can sort of optimize their choices. I have 3 teenagers at home, and so I get a lot of unfiltered advice about a lot of things. But especially on these kinds of things. Like, in fact, just last night, I was sitting down with my teenagers, and if you want to exercise some due humility, get your teenagers to review your work. And so we were going around this, and it was the highest praise I got from my 8th grader. She said, well, this would actually be helpful. This would do something, because I would know that if I take this course, that actually applies to that.
That's great, and I think you hit exactly where I was hoping you would go, which is the more that we can do to structure and support, right? It's both providing clarity around that structure and then giving the appropriate support.
But you can't just say, like, some folks will say, well, we just need to make the universities take those courses. And apply it to what, right? Or we need to make the community colleges take those courses. Like, that's not the problem. The problem is there's a lack of clarity about what the pathway is. And we can't expect high school counselors to know thousands of pathways. We've got to give them the tools so that they can see and they can appropriately advise the students, or even like our radical notions, why don't you just give it to the kids? Why don't we just be transparent about here's what courses you take to earn all of these different kinds of credentials, whether we're talking about an academic degree or whether we're talking about one of our workforce credentials. Let's make those pathways much more transparent.
And the more transparent that those pathways become, I think the better employers see that we're meeting their needs. Think about this for a second. 65% of the jobs in this state don't require a college degree. 55% of the jobs in the state require some training after high school. And if I'm a community college, I'm looking at 55% of the jobs in the state that has 14 million people in employment. I'm looking at that saying little over 7, 8 million of those jobs I should be training for. Training after high school doesn't actually require a university degree. And think about the fact also that most people are probably done thinking in terms of, I'm going to go to community college by the time they're 25, 26 years old. That doesn't mean they should be thinking that. I'm just telling you what people do in their life. We track you in the workforce to age 55. And we track you differently after that. So you got age 25, there's 30 years in that span that they're still making decisions about their career and the pathway that they're going to take. They've got some incredible tools. We just stood up an app. You can get it on iPhone or the one with the green text too. You can get it on either one. It's called MyTX Career, My Texas Career. What we did is we took a riff off of theirs and said, all right, we want you to be able to tell your phone, you tell Siri, this is what I have, and this is what I'd like to be. And what the app does is it calculates all the things that have to happen in between. So, just a case in point. If you're a dental hygienist, you're literally one course away from working in a chip manufacturer, like not potato chips, computer chips. We got potato chips too. And you're one step away. And they want you. You're used to working in confined spaces. You're used to working where they can't talk back to you. And you're used to wearing a mask. And now you don't have to put your hands in someone's mouth. So it's a big deal. And that's been your lifelong goal. Put it in the phone, it'll tell you that. Not only will it tell you that, it'll tell you which colleges in your area are offering that, community colleges, universities too. It'll tell you if there's apprenticeship programs. It'll tell you a lot about you. It's up to you after that. These guys, meaning all of higher ed, or particularly the community colleges, they've done a great job of lining up the fact that, okay, this is the course sequence that we need. This is some financial aid that we can help people with. And let me ask you a question. I mean, people wake up at the age of 27 and they can't figure out where the 2 kids came from and the mortgage came from and why do we have 3 dogs and what's wrong with the car. Why does the check engine light go off when I get gas station but not at the Shell station on the corner? And it's like, I hate my job, but like, what am I supposed to do? I can't quit because I've got 3 kids, 3 dogs, a car that won't start. What am I supposed to do? Actually, there's an answer for that too. And the app will help in some ways tell you it is possible. You don't have to stop getting paid to go back to school and do this. And I think that's incredibly powerful because you're talking about a workforce that is engaged in the workforce. No one can quit to go back to school. And the flexibility and frankly the innovativeness of the community colleges has been impressive, but I think we're going to see a lot more of this. I think we're going to see things that astound us all, and I'm happy about that because we've got to keep pushing this workforce through. If you have stalled out in the workforce, we have to uninstall you for 2 reasons. One, you can probably make more money. And 2, there's 325,000 people graduating every year from high school. They need a job too. And so we've got to keep this movement through the workforce because it's better for families. If you can increase your earning potential, you can increase your compensation, and it helps us place these people in these entry-level jobs that we know we can place people into. These tools are only as good as they're accessible to people. These tools are only as good as they give actual and legitimate advice. And I'm tickled to death to hear that your 8th grader approved because a great deal of the Texas state government asks me about workforce stuff. But there's 2 people in this state that couldn't care less about my opinions on the workforce or what I think they should be doing to maximize it. So I'm going to talk to you after this.
All right. I know this has been a thought-provoking panel, so we'd love to hear if folks have additional questions for our panelists. We've got mics that are roving. Just raise your hand or stand up. We've got one up front. Callie? She's coming up with the mic. Now we need to use the mic for. Thank you.
Hey, gentlemen, thank you for what you're doing. Just a data question. Excited to hear about the tools that are coming. I'm looking at the longitudinal data. Just curious, thinking about FERPA and solving for the disaggregation at the student level. Have any conversations around that, being able to track from K-12 through higher ed, but into the workforce at the student level, rather than kind of maybe ethnicity, race, gender, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, this is really critical because we've got more and more data that's available and we can combine data sets, then it becomes possible to identify individuals. So we have to be vigilant about the infrastructure. So we've got more secure, modern infrastructure, but also so that we're appropriately masking. So if we're talking about like our new, we call the Texas Talent Trajectory that we roll out in the month. That's looking at like students that started in 8th grade and how many graduated from high school, how many graduated from college, 2-year, 4-year, that kind of thing, and we'll continue to iterate on that. There are filters so that you can look statewide, you can look by region, you can look by county, you can look by school district, you can look by high school. And some of the high schools are so small, even that you do run into these small numbers problems, especially when you start applying filters. So we have to be really careful that that there are some cases we just have to mask because you don't want we don't want the identifiable information out there totally. Now that said, if we're talking about other kinds of dashboards, like where we're providing to higher ed institutions, it's really important that they're unmasked. Now there we're just reflecting data back to the institutions. And so where we're going on that is that when institutions submit their data to us, again, most of our institutions in Texas and in America don't have the ability to track students' progress to credential, at least in a way that helps them enter. So that's been an important innovation in institutions that are leaders, right? Georgia State, Arizona State, UT Austin. But not everybody can do that, especially the smaller colleges. So what we're trying to do is reset the baseline where we reflect that data back to every institution. So you can go to the smallest college out in the middle of Dallas, Texas, and be able to see like here's your enrollment, where students are getting hung up, and what the completions are like, and then are they landing their jobs? And here's what the wage experience looks like, so that for different fields.
Melissa. Joseph.
Hi. So this question, Mike 1. Okay, thank you. So I think this question is mainly for the commissioner. Can you just talk a little bit about whether there are aspects in HBA or just strategies to ensure that institutions are not encouraged to counsel certain students into like easier to complete courses, given the fact that so much of the funding is now tied to completion and outcomes?
Yeah. So when we were working on the commission, Don alluded to it. So because of partnerships with philanthropy, Gates Foundation, and other philanthropies, state and national philanthropies, and also state support, so we were able to take the deepest dive. I think anybody's attempted in this, and we talked to all of the other states that have worked on outcomes-based funding models. Then we also did a lot of technical work looking at the cost drivers. One of the things we've heard from other states that they caution us about outcomes-based funding is if you're just funding on completion of credentials, then there's a disincentive to serve students that are more expensive and more challenging, right? So it was pretty important that we built in ways to recognize those higher costs of serving a student who was a college ready when they enrolled in college, or a student who was a student who's an adult learner who's going back to school. One of the important contributions to the literature in this work was we found the highest cost drivers around the adult learners, and so our highest weights that are built into the system are focused on adult learners, so that we're not like we can't be competitive with state. We can't hit our goals if all we're doing is focused on like 18-year-olds. We've also got to focus on incentives to serve the kind of folks Bryan was just talking about that are going to need to upskill and reskill. And if you've been out of school for a while, you've got a lot of complex issues that are going to have to be addressed, and there's costs associated with that. So we tried to recognize those in the new system and provide those adjustments and weights.
One more.
Good job. First, thank you all for all the work and the vision that you all have put into all the efforts. I'm curious, and Commissioner, I would love for you to talk more about College Connect. We've spent a lot of time at this conference talking about modalities of dual credit and how best to serve which students, and excited about new opportunities, and would love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, thanks very much, Sarah. So folks have strong philosophical views, and there's different policies across the country on how much do we gate dual credit? Like, the students have to be, in some sense, college ready before we allow them to take dual credit courses. In Texas, already in statute, we have a provision that says students aren't degree-seeking students. The college has the ability then to waive that requirement. And some of the colleges have done that, some haven't. What we've done is we've worked on sort of new rules around House Bill 8 around dual credit. Is two things. So first is we said, let's clarify that when a student files a degree plan and they're a degree-seeking student, for that academic or course credential, then when they hit that point, they absolutely need to have demonstrated college readiness unless they're exempt. But we created this new class of dual credit courses that we call College Connect courses. So what's a College Connect course? College Connect course is just a dual credit course where we build in support for students who are not yet college ready. So like we do in like some higher ed coaching room, and you think what you do with coworkers is remediation, right? Go ahead and get the student into the college course and provide them support so that they can shore up in the areas they need to shore up and they can be successful in the course. So then if they're successful, then you go to twofer because the students actually not only college ready, but they actually earned a credit that's transferable. So there was this, we've tried other strategies in Texas. Like this idea of saying, well, let's do remediation. Let's just put the remediation in the high schools. But that's failed. That doesn't work. But the traditional remediation has been a failed strategy in higher ed and in high schools, right? Because you don't have, we don't have enough alignment in what those expectations are, right? Between the high schools and the higher ed institutions. So I'm excited about this new strategy where we're saying, okay, let's go ahead and get the students, and we're not talking about students who need much more intensive remediation. I'm talking about the students that they do not yet demonstrate good college readiness in some particular areas. Let's go ahead and get them into the college courses and give them the support they need to be successful. So then the student can actually earn a transferable credit and demonstrate college readiness at the same time.
That's great. John, I want to maybe give you all the last word here. One final question for you guys to resonate on. I'm going to start with you. We've got teams from across the country, some state teams, some local teams. They're all working to try to build these accelerated pathways for youth. As you reflect on your experience and your time, and you were to offer one piece of advice, whether that's to do this or absolutely don't do that, what would you suggest to them moving forward to this conference to really hone in and make sure that their work continues and accelerates?
It's a great question. I would say start, whether it's today or very soon, with thinking about sustainability, leverage, and scale. There's all these initiatives that are philanthropically funded or there's corporate funded is great, but there's a kind of 2 to 5 year window. So what are the right sort of hooks to hang your hat on? With state funding, federal funding, just, we've got to build this for students, for employers, for college, for ourselves, into some type of sustainability plan. So that would be my advice. Today or very soon, start thinking about what you're doing and how you build long-term sustainability leverage and scale.
Commissioner Keller?
Yeah, I think I would underline what John said. You have to build the kind of results you want to see from the system into the design of the system. So part of the problem with a lot of philanthropic efforts or a lot of even legislative initiatives is they're bolt-on, right? So then the incentives all pull you in this direction, but there's a grant, so you can do a little bit of this here or there, right? So you have to try to build the incentives to try to get the results you want to see into the design of the system itself. So that's what we've been wrestling with in K-12 and in higher ed, especially with community colleges here in Texas. What I'm especially excited about is it seems like we're finally starting to see the benefit of that alignment already in what we see in enrollments and the kinds of programs Concord actually brought.
I'm in agreement. I'd say 3 things. First is figure out if the outcomes that you're imagining are the outcomes that somebody wants. Is that what the employers want? 2, we always do this in government-related things. We always try to fix the system to make it work the way it ought to be working. And I'm telling you, if it's operating that way, it will never work the way you want it to work. You will have to, in some ways, abandon that system. And the third thing is if you are clear about the outcomes and understand that you need a different process or a better process to get there, be prepared to navigate through the criticism that's going to come, because once you start changing that system, you're changing someone's system. Someone benefits from that, or we wouldn't have it. And I think if you're clear about those outcomes and you're clear about why the system that you're really advocating for would get us to those outcomes, don't be afraid to bring those other allies into the mix. If 95% of your employers are saying, this is the outcome we need and this is the process that will get us there, and your criticism is coming from within the system that you're changing, introduce them to the system. the system will be delighted.
That's great. In addition to everything that the panelists just said, I'm walking away with 4 things. 1, more clarity on the credentials and skills necessary. 2, the intentionality of the work and the dual credit pathways that you're offering to students, making sure they're leading to something rather than just general. 3, the transparency of choice and making sure that individuals have that opportunity to understand and see their paths. And then 4th, we need to listen to our youth. We need to listen to the individuals in the system and adults as they're looking to navigate and understand what's getting in the way of doing that. So please join me in thanking our panel for a wonderful